Okay, where to start? My name's Michael Sullivan. I am now 44 years old. What brought me to the carnivore diet, I might as well explain from when I was a young child. Um, Growing up in New Zealand, basically in a rural town, I was very anemic. I had my tonsils and adenoids removed about the age of 6. I was quite a tall, skinny kid. I never had any energy. If I ever got a cut or anything, I would get infected, and the infection would take a long time to go away. I used to have to love the cold because I always felt warm to the point of being uncomfortable. I grew up in a household where we weren't very well off, and so we basically lived on the diet of bread, veggies, and very little meat as such. But we got by. I mean, we didn't know any different. As I went through school and everything, genetically I was kind of going to be quite tall. I basically, at the age of 13, hit 6'5". But I was such a tall, strapping, skinny guy. I basically couldn't control my limbs. I had massive growing pains to the point I was tested constantly for rheumatoid arthritis. But the doctors always came back and said, no, it's just growing pains, just growing pains. I did have some x-rays, I did have some stress fractures, and that my bones were actually quite weak at the time. Once I got to around about 15, 16, coming from a rugby family, I started playing sport, and I started playing rugby, and I just couldn't get 10 minutes into anything, no matter how hard I trained. I was very dedicated, had a very good mindset. I could never get as fit or as energetic as the other guys, and I could see myself was actually putting in more work. I got to about the age of 18, 19. I actually came across the Atkins diet, and I basically cut out a lot of the breads and everything like that and ate a more low carb, quite a bit of bacon and steak and meat and stuff, and that's about the best I've ever felt in my life. I actually started doing quite well at sport. I actually got up to, premier status in rugby in my early 20s. I was quite fit, being 6'5", at that stage I was about 114 kg and probably around about 8 to 10% body fat during that time. But after every game, it took me 3, 4, 5 days to recover. And I always felt off. I always felt tired. I always felt strained. I just couldn't get to the recovery, or felt, the next day could wake up and walk around. Always had sore joints. I basically carried on like this for the next decade, played rugby for, up to about the age of 33, but always felt bad, always got rugby headache, always had sore joints. Took me a long time to recover, and it wasn't until my father, when I was about 40, actually got diagnosed with celiac disease, and he had a lot of joint problems, and he's had a knee replacement recently. So what happened then is I decided then at the age of 40 to go and get tested, and I had the gastro, and I actually found out that I actually had celiac disease. So I basically then went on a keto diet, but I was eating quite a few, leafy vegetables and trying to eat really healthy. After I finished sport, I actually blew out to about 158 kgs, and I actually got quite big. And doing this, and that's the main reason I went on this diet. So I basically got down to around about 132 kgs, and at that stage I was working long hours, and I wasn't eating that well, and I actually just got into a bit of a rut. And so basically I was, because I didn't know any difference, I basically wasn't I had depression. I wasn't too happy with myself, but I always worked hard. I always had the drive to, make sure I did my job. I never took any sick days, no matter how I felt. I basically hobble around for the whole day and not show any signs of being sore. And it actually wasn't until just over a year ago, I think about the time when I saw the Jordan Peterson video on Joe Rogan, and he's talking about his daughter and basically about the carnivore diet. But I decided, I've got to do this. I've got to try something. So I embarked on it, and after around about 3 days, well, I just, when you live your whole life and you feel the way you feel, you just don't know any different. I could, you can put a percentage on it. I would say 1,000% I felt better, easily, 10 times better, 1,000%, not a problem. I was basically at that stage just eating, rump with a lot of fat. I was still drinking coffee. I did the diet for around about 6 weeks solid, and I dropped down to about 115 kg. I just felt phenomenal. I was basically walking, I was floating on air. I had no joint pain. My mood was amazing. I was just loving stuff. I was excited about things. I got to the stage after about 6 weeks where I did get a little bit tired of just eating the meat, and I made the mistake, a massive mistake, of I went and got McDonald's. I suffered for around about 2 weeks. I had all my chronic joint pain came back, depression came back, and of course after for the 2 weeks, I then started back on a carnivore based diet, and I actually felt it took me 2 weeks to get over it. It was just horrible. Of course, I watched a lot of videos online, just different people's reactions. Well, actually, you could probably say, well over 100 people's different reactions, and which then, it kind of like stabilized in my mind. This is what I've got to do. This is a lifestyle choice. This is not a diet. This is just something that has to be done. I can't go back to the way I felt, and I can't go back to, the lifestyle of being able to go out and eat what I want, when I want, and how I want. I found my productivity at work picked up. I even more than what it was, and I quite prided myself on that I was a hard worker. I wasn't actively doing any sport. I basically stopped driving my car. I started walking to work, which is about 40 minutes away, and I was actually enjoying it because I was my joints weren't aching. I could actually walk. I actually was like I was floating on air when I was walking. It was just, the sun was brighter, everything was clearer. And that's another thing which is quite weird. My vision actually was better. Things were sharper. My thinking was clearer. I've always prided myself on being a lateral thinker. I do a lot of problem solving at work. I'm actually, I'm a packaging designer, and but I also run the machines and do a lot of problem solving in the industry. And I just found everything was coming quicker. So as for the basis of the carnivore diet, and I do look at both sides of the story, and I do look at people who thrive on a vegetarian diet or a vegan diet, and they feel better. The more I watch online, the more I see people are suffering because of these diets, and it just makes me wonder, do these people know what fruits and vegetables can actually do to certain people? Not all people, but certain people. I understand that. I now know that I'm one of the people which is heavily affected by fruit or vegetables, of the lectins or whatever. And I would just have to say there's so many people out there who've taken on this journey that have shown me, that the diet which is pushed, the pyramid diet or whatever, or the health recommendations by the government, are not a one-fits-all solution, and I do understand what's, happening with the survey. Just even the last couple of weeks where I'm at, you hear for this whole vegan is the future. We've got to cull all the dairy herds. We've got to stop eating meat. Meat's dangerous for you. Every bone, non-aching now bone in my body, just states, this can't be the case. You cannot legislate a diet to people where it's actually harming them. Actually, that is nothing more than criminal in my mind. If anything, if they're going to go down this avenue, there has to be a certain card we can get given where we get discounted, free-range grass-fed meat. They've got to recognise that people are affected. And it's just not just slightly affected. I just look back on my life and my childhood and how sick I was. There's absolutely no choice but for me to carry on with this carnivore diet. And I'm so glad that I've been given the opportunity to talk about my life experience. I'm not going back. I can honestly say now that I wouldn't have reached the age of 50 carrying on how I was, because I was just so sore and down. New lease on life. There's no way that, and I will, say, there's no way but I will respect or take the government's approach in today's world towards meat and dairy and anything with animal fats or anything like that, because, meat does heal. And I'm walking proof of that. So thank you for giving me this opportunity, and I hope that this helps.